When it comes to arranging a song, 99% of producers think that it's all about starting with a loop and then adding new elements to it or subtracting other elements from it. But what they don't understand is that this way of thinking about arrangement is fundamentally flawed, and in this video right here I'm going to explain as to why that is. I will also show you a new and better way of thinking about arrangements that will make your life much easier, and I'll walk you through 3 highly effective techniques that you can use in your next productions. So in this session we are exactly in that phase of drafting a first arrangement. As you can see, it's not a lot of elements. We have a kick, bass, 2 textures that are essentially the same, just pitched up a little bit differently, 1 lead line, percussion line, couple of claps and hats, and then 3-4 different noisers or noise hits that happen throughout the song. And that's basically it. So most producers in this situation, they would think about, okay, what else do I need to add to get more parts out of this song? Then they would go in desperately trying to add new things, always second guessing whether this is an element that fits or doesn't fit, until they reach this massive point of frustration where everything sounds muddy. The session looks overwhelming when you just open it. It takes forever to load, and tell me if this is you, let me know in the comments. And they just don't know what they should do with this mess. Yes, subtracting some stuff again, but then the question is, how do you kill your darlings? What do you pick? Now, I invite you to adopt a completely different perspective now, together with me in this tutorial. The crucial mindset shift that I think needs to happen at this point is to not think about what can I add, but instead think about how can I get the most out of what I already have, and how can I make sure to get a consistent sonic story that is creating tension and release and evolves throughout the song with just the elements that I already have. Okay, let's say we adopt that perspective. The next question is, what do we start with? And my recommendation for you is to focus on the one element that provides the most emotional value. And typically that is something like the lead line or a specific vocal chop or something that serves as the main hook of the song. Even in a techno production, you have something that just carries the song. So in our case, we have this lead synth line. Now I'm going to play for you the main part. So this is basically the drop section, or what's about to be the drop later on. So I will now show you 3 different techniques that you can use to get the most out of this lead element. Before we do so, if you need help with finishing songs, I highly recommend getting my Finisher Framework. That is a 3-step guide you can use to finish at least 1 great sounding song per month. You can get it at pickyourself.com/framework. The link is in the description. So first technique is the easiest one, and that is to simply extract different parts out of that sequence and sprinkle them across your arrangement. You see what I did here, like this part of the lead line looks different than this one. This is the main one. So the only thing that I did is I actually, instead of playing the whole line, I just selected a part of it. So this one. Now the interesting thing here is that this creates a form of tension that wants to be resolved because that phrase is just not finished. And I could sprinkle this across the whole arrangement in different ways. I could even put it somewhere closer to a potential intro or in a build-up section. What I did is I put it in the breakdown that happens before the drop. So I have a lot of anticipation before that drop hits and the whole melody unfolds. But this works best in combination with the second technique that I'm about to show you now. If I open the automation lanes here, you can see that there's like a ton of automation on different tracks, but I'm not so much interested in volume automations. I actually want to go into the lead line, and as you can see, Wavetable is like the sound generation source here, and we can see that I heavily automated the attack time of that synth. Now if I play it in full, like in the main section, you can see that the attack time is basically 0. But what's interesting is what happens in the breakdown before. So here, you barely hear anything. And here it starts to get interesting in the middle of the breakdown. Watch this here. You understand how this creates tension right now, so this wants to be resolved, that phrase. Now, not all the details of these transitions are done yet. This is also not mixed at all, so excuse if this is a little bit unpolished yet, but you get the idea. So we're creating a lot of tension by breaking this into different fragments and sprinkling them across the track. And then secondly, modulating crucial parameters that help us with a different perception of how that sound finally comes across them. Now, this whole philosophy of working with what you already have does not only apply to lead elements. I personally also use it for pretty much everything else. So let's say I have a pad or this texture here, and I want to increase the intensity in the song. I don't think about, okay, maybe I need to create 3 different pads and stack them on top of each other. I think about, okay, what can I get out of this sound first of all, and then maybe duplicate it and treat this duplicated version slightly differently. So this pad here is like a down-pitched version of this one. So this is higher, this is lower. I actually use a lot of automation on this one. I use a lot of effects here, the erosion plugin, phaser flanger, and I kind of play with these different layers of something that I already have. So just to give you some context, this is the lower one. I have the super gritty, intense texture that right before the drop hits intensifies even more. Now, the final technique I'm about to show you is so cool. I haven't shown it anywhere else on the channel yet, but it's one of my absolute favorites. You don't want to miss this. If you got any value out of this so far, then consider subscribing to the channel, consider liking this video. It really helps me. Now let's get on to the last tip. Now, sometimes you want the tonal quality of something like this lead sound or the overall atmosphere of it, but you don't want necessarily the exact melody to play across the whole track. There is a cool way to weave the sonic essence of this element into other parts of the track with one simple trick. Let me show you how. So in order for this trick to work, you need something like the Ableton Hybrid Reverb or really any other reverb that lets you freeze the tail of the reverb so that it just keeps on playing. So what I will do here is I will increase the wet dry to 100%. So this is what the reverb alone sounds like. We'll hit freeze. And you can also activate this here, which then feeds even more of the input signal into this buffer. We'll then record this to a new track. So we select lead as our input source, record arm this, so we can, for example, take this snippet, move it to the intro, then let's say use an auto filter, filter out some of the top end, a little bit of resonance, and then obviously make it a bit quieter because this gets really, really loud. So we just want this to be in the background. And instead of just a boring kick and bass, we can now start the track with a texture that is already in line with what we're about to tell. And this is a concept called foreshadowing. We're foreshadowing some of the sonic quality that the track will have later on. Let me know in the comments if this approach resonates with you. I would love to hear from you and see you in another video soon.